still trying to connect. We'll just have to get them up to speed as they join us. I have disabled the waiting room, so we should have no problem if folks are joining a little bit after we get started. So I want to welcome you all to the March Behavioral Health broadcast for the American Indian Alaska Native Addiction Technology Transfer Center. Today, we have a fantastic presenter. Teresa Sault-Brill is here, and we'll be following up on a discussion that she started with you. If you joined us, if you've been joining us, this discussion was started in January. Is that right, Teresa? January, we started this?
Yes.
And we looked at some of the feedback from some of you and some of the comments, and Teresa and I decided we should perhaps do a follow-up. So this is sort of building on the discussion that was started in January, and we hope that those of you that were here can participate and comment and jump in as we are going along. Those of you that did not attend the January broadcast, you still can be just as interactive and as involved in the discussion. So we're really happy to have you here. Let's go ahead and get started. I also have in the audience that will be joining our discussion today with Teresa, I have Dr. Dan Foster. He is a consultant of ours here at the center. He's also a colleague and a friend, and we're really happy to have him with us as well. So Dr. Dan may be dropping in to add to the commentary and to the discussion. So Doc, we're happy to have you along with us today. And we've got a nice group. So I've got a few intro slides to go through, and then I'm going to get Teresa's slides pulled up and we'll get started. So welcome everyone. As most of you know, this event is brought to you by the American Indian Alaska Native Addiction Technology Transfer Center. This center, our national center, is located at the University of Iowa. I'm broadcasting to you live from the College of Public Health here on campus. We've got spring break this week, so it's very, very quiet here. So we should have no interruptions. The HTC network is made up of 10 regional centers, a National Hispanic and Latino HTC National Center, as well as a HTC coordinating office at the University of Missouri. Again, as most of you know, this project is supported and funded by SAMHSA. The content is developed by the presenters, and the opinions expressed today do not necessarily reflect the views of the American Indian Alaska Native HTC, HHS, or SAMHSA. Following today's event, we will reach out to you via email. We will provide links or PDF version of the slides that we look at today. We're also recording this event, so it can be viewed at a later time at our Native Center for Behavioral Health YouTube archive webpage. If you have a colleague or friend that missed today's broadcast, you can access this recorded broadcast there and view it at your convenience. We'll also be offering 1.5 CEUs. You can request a certificate of attendance following today's event when you receive the follow-up email. If you need continuing education units for your credentialing, you may be able to use this certificate to meet some of those hourly requirements. Lastly, I will post in the chat today a link to a very, very short survey that we ask everyone to complete following the event. The survey is very important to our center, as most of you know, and it allows us to continue to provide events like this by showing our funder the work that we're doing. It's voluntary. You don't have to complete the survey, but we would really enjoy hearing from you, all of your answers cannot be linked to you in any way personally, and everything is confidential. If you have any questions about this survey, please reach out to me here at the center, and I'm happy to field your questions. I know that we are gathered here virtually today, but we wanted to take just a few moments to acknowledge the land and pay respects to the Indigenous nations whose homelands were forcibly taken and inhabited. Please take a moment to read this land acknowledgement, which was created by 3 members of our team, Ella and Keely Driscoll and Mr. Sean Baer. Thank you. Well, without further ado, I want to present to you today's speaker, Teresa Sault-Brill. Teresa is also a consultant here with our center. She is a colleague and also a friend, and we're happy to have her here. She has a vast background of work experiences in behavioral health related fields, and she brings to the table a wealth of knowledge on Native traditional life and culture, and we're really happy to have her part of our team here. So please enjoy today's presentation. There's a lot of information, but a lot of it will be included on the slides that Teresa has prepared, so you can reference it at a later time. So I want to introduce Teresa Sault-Brill, and while she's talking a little bit about herself and what brings her here, I'm going to let her and Dan do short introductions while I get the next set of slides up. So Teresa, Dan, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming today. My name is Teresa Sault-Brill. I have 3 names. Jinnakazut right now is the name that I primarily go by. I am Anishinaabeg and Menominee descent. I go Anishinaabeg ways. I'm really thankful you guys are all here today. This is a part 2, as Steve said, a follow-up of January's. It seemed like people were hoping we'd get a little bit more into it, so here we are doing that. I pulled on Doc Foster. I know he has a wonderful background in all of this as well. So I'm going to let him jump in there and say hi to everybody, introduce himself. Miigwech for coming.
With Dr. P, good to see longtime friends and relatives on this call. I'm excited to hear Teresa and Steve as they weigh in, and folks that you're listening, Marcita and Mary Louise and other longtime friends, come on in and share. We'll meet in spirit as well as in mind and voice. Thank you.
Definitely. Today, I hope you guys do jump in, and gals, if anything is relating to you here, or you have suggestions, things, anything that Spirit's pulling you to share, or questions. If you can't jump on, definitely in the chat box, feel free. I put quite a few slides together. You're welcome to use them and cater them towards your personal teachings back home for individuals or groups or whatever you need it for. And then you can have these for resources later. We're just going to kind of jump through them since there's so many, and I really, really would like to try to open it up for discussion this time. So if we can go through these slides. Steve, we'll go on to the next one. This is just our opening slide.
And I'll sort of watch the chat box, Teresa, and if you're unable to unmute and ask a question, feel free to post it in the chat, or if you have a question, you can use the hand raise feature to let us know that you would like to make a comment or have a question. So Teresa, I'll advance the slides on your request.
All right. So years ago, I learned there is such a darkness in and around our reserves in Indian country. And with all the dysfunction, we look at our statistics today, all the struggles, what spirit is it feeding? And the elders, my father would talk to me about that. What is the best way to counter that? And a lot of our people are mistaking it. They are pushed in such a place that you think that fight is more physical than anything. And sometimes it's just letting your light shine, going on your way, making your good choices that it's not feeding into. And that is one of the best ways to counter that darkness. If we could go on to the next slide, these are just some of the topics we'll be covering today. A lot of it, the okay not to be okay, the wheel tool, as somebody called it in the last webinar in January, the tool or crutch, and the topic on matter. These things seem to really call out to folks, so I'm throwing these ones back in there and getting a little bit more into it. Okay, the next slide, Steve. Me quit. So I believe that we already know the way. 7th generation prophecies for us, and each tribe is a little bit different, but they seem to have a similar teaching on, and it spoke about these times we're in. And with that, they talked about the old ones being with us, around us, born in us. My dad called it innate in us. So they talk about generational trauma that we have wired into our DNA now, but we also have these balanced teachings. So with that comes innate knowledge. So as it said, our ancestors didn't just leave us trauma, they also left us these wonderful ways and teachings. It's in us, and we have to start trusting in ourselves and spirit. So we know the way. And so this slide goes a little bit more into that. And where our accountability is, where is our roles, where the real power is, even though the world around us seems to be taking that from us and it feels like we don't have that, what we can be doing. On to the next slide, Steve. So by taking ourselves back, we do rise again. And that is the thing. What is missing? When we talk about reconciliation, what really is that? So when we think about that, it is ourselves, our identities, all of the issues that we're dealing with today, a lot of the diagnoses that we're seeing, identity disorders, bipolar disorders, things like that. We're losing pieces and parts of ourselves along the way, from the hurts, the traumas, the fears, the injustices. And we have to get to a point where we go, this can't keep disrupting our life and taking ourselves back in our purpose throughout it. So this kind of goes into that a little bit more, and what is needed now, the next steps and the steps beyond. So what do we do when we are going through something immediately, but then after? Sometimes we have traumas that occurred as a child, and how do we pave our ways back to that and leave that go? When you're holding on to one thing, it's hard to hold on to something more. So this is what we can do as individuals and families and in our roles in our lives. And to redefine, to take this back, we need to redefine what it is we're about, what we can change, what we can do. It gets to a point where it's so overwhelming with so much going on, the co-occurring with each other and all of that we're juggling. Well, what can you do? And take a look at that, refocus, kind of like the bear teaches us. And what can we do today? Maybe we can do more tomorrow, but what can we do today? And then what is our plans? And talk a little bit about that, our character, and in going into that and defining it for ourselves, our children, our family, our loved ones, and doing that together as well. So we're holding each other accountable in that. On to the next slide, Steve, if we can. So this is a little bit more about that, and it is redefining our principles through colonization, through trauma, through normalization of dysfunction and things like that. We are kind of getting away from our traditional principles and values and morals, that we have these loyalties. Well, that's your family. Got to stand by them no matter what. But in our ways, so many tribes I know, including mine, we wouldn't have stood by that. And what does that end up then bringing? The cycle of that. What comes next when we stand by that? What more? And how does that turn our days, our lives, our home? And what spirit space is that allowing? So we have so many families calling on the medicine person or the spiritual person saying, I have this going on in my home. Will you come bless it? Will you come smudge it out? But then what do we have coming back in our home, in our space? And then who is suffering for that? The elders would always say the opposite of the bads, who suffers is the innocents. So that it would be the children. It would be those who maybe are getting out of treatment, out of jail, and sincerely are trying to make these changes. It could be that family that's really trying hard to do best for their family and been doing really well, but because they are being told you got to support this relative, that's your whoever, grandmother, it's your mother, it's your father, it's your uncle, and it's the drunken uncle who's coming over being belligerent, and it's kind of taking everybody else down in a way and normalizing something that shouldn't be normal. But what spirits are coming with them? What is he holding on to? And what comes into your home then? And we usually recognize that. You get reports of that in Indian country of, why do I have this in my house, making us feel some kind of way. If we can go on the next slide. All of these slides kind of go into it and guide you through to work on these things with individuals or groups at home. So it feels good to do good, keep humble. Oftentimes today we see folks in Indian country going from one extreme to the next, and in that they are going from this bad space or this very stuck in their trauma space to advertising, I did good today. And that is going to the extreme opposite, where now you're going from a wounded ego of I'm no good, I'm nobody, I'm nothing, and feeling bad about self, to look at me and having this kind of inflated ego. And these are slippery slopes. And with victim mentality and all of that kind of going on that we've been dealing with generationally, being brought in, telling us it's okay to stay stuck and it's okay to stay feeling down, and staying in that funk, to going to the extreme almost starts to feed a bipolar when you look at that. So we look at when it was the mental health, how it may look on the outside, but what is really going on in our balance teachings when we go back culturally says, come back to the center here. So these are things that we would like to do good. I on another webinar for a spring series event spoke about Opechi's story, and being that spring is coming here, it kind of tells about that in Opechi's teachings and Robin's teachings for the Anishinaabe, how we did accountability with each other and checking in and being proud of each other, but being humble about it and trying our best. So this is something we normally did culturally, and to bring back is wonderful, opening up this dialogue at home to build these kind of connections and bonds instead of trauma bonding. And then it doesn't shut down or close that door of share with me if you're having a rough time. Instead, it kind of makes it a safer space. You're seen in more ways, right? So to talk about what I want to do, and whether you're a teenager with your friends and siblings, or if you're a kid with your parents and engaging them, as a family unit, and what could we do that's good today? How do we be a role model? And then also with your significant other, do it as a couple. So, and then in the community base, we're role models. We have our duties, our obligations as tribal people, and it changes as we age, what that is and how that looks. So to talk about these things with each other, so we're not getting to the point of enabling, we're being taken advantage of, or stepping where we don't belong, which could be hindering one's lessons. And so let's talk about that. Let's start working on that again and implementing and bringing it back, doing it as exercises. It does feel good to do good, but check ourselves in. What kind of feel good did it? Did it just bring that warmth back into the home and the world where there is such a darkness around us oftentimes in our communities? So did that bring that peace and that element? Did it set an example out there? Or did it feed the ego? So then what's going on? How come they need that? And that kind of opens a door for what's happening that they're feeling so down about themselves, and then working through that. So that isn't an opening, isn't an attack for who knows what else could be at that time playing upon that on them, or knocking them down from what they really, their true potential. So how to really support each other. And then when you don't do so well, even maybe you felt like that day you weren't the best role model, something happened. Share that too. We shared our lessons. It's okay to not be perfect. That's part of victim programming and mentality. And we believe in our teachings as well. That's part of a bad spirit. Even the creator, we believe in our teachings, isn't perfect. So that's part of a bad spirit chirping in your ear to try to blind you and push you away from. So it's okay to make these mistakes. It's okay to have, why did I feel like? So next time you can go beyond that. And next time, and we can learn from each other. So more than likely, each other's going to be in that situation or know somebody that is. So how can we overcome all of this stuff going on that each of us at different ages are facing in Indian country? Can we go on to the next slide, Steve? So the spirit tracks you're leaving. I don't know if you guys have heard of this. I wish we could see hands or something. How many have heard of this in their teachings? The elders would talk about the spirit tracks you're leaving. Science talks about the energy behind it, or magnetism. So whichever kind of way as you go, but we leave spirit tracks. And so you could be walking in that good way. You could be presenting as that gentleman and opening that door, but meanwhile be that drummer that's sitting there scouting all the girls out and being disrespectful and thinking and looking in that way, right? So what are your tracks really leaving? Because that's what spirit sees. Spirit sees spirit. Spirit sees beyond it. He's shore game. So the elders would always say, you need to know your truths. You need to really know what you're really about. And this way you wouldn't be challenged by bad spirits. If you were, you wouldn't be taken down. You need to stay humble. Even good spirits, we had in many ways, we have the story of Spirit Rock. That was a good being. That was a great being. And the three men that came upon him, the hunters, two asked for wonderful things to help support the people. But one of them wanted eternal life. So to go about in that way, I mean, this is a Manaduk. He's lesser than the Great Spirit. How dare you ask a God, of what some people call a God of eternal life? Even the Creator doesn't have that. Our universes collapse and change, so cannot give what they do not have. So we gave the best and turned them into spirit rock. So we watch our egos. We always checked them. Our warriors knew that. Our hunters knew that. Our elders knew that, and it doesn't change no matter the year we're in. And we see that. But oftentimes, what do we do? So this also, what fruits are coming from it? So science again in New Age talks about the energy being put out there. But if your mind, heart, body, and spirit all isn't together in it, in what you're claiming to be about or believe in, the elders would say that you're presenting a false face or you're a trickster, that these are very bad spirits. So what is that feeding into and opening the door of and connecting with? But also, what does that do to our people? If you're claiming to be about this and putting on this show, and people start to trust or believe that in you, even just being a parent and claiming to be that mother or father and then not truly being there. And they do see the others there. So what is it you're really about? To be that father that, claims to say respect women, but then meanwhile is watching what on TV and laughing in what way? So what does that teach? And it brings in confusion. And how do they open that dialogue? So what fruits come from our choices? Can we go on to the next slide?
Teresa, I had a couple of comments I thought you might be interested in. Allison says, related to this discussion, actions matching our words, congruency in life is key living an authentic, is key to living an authentic life.
Yes.
And
Miigwech, Allison, that is so true. And without that imbalance does create that opening, and it also creates a confusion within self where they're feeling like they're stunted, and why aren't I getting any further, and how come I keep getting this lesson? What is the lesson? So consistency and the togetherness is so important, that authentic life, because then they're saying, why can't I connect to spirit like these other ones can? This may be why. Allison's spot on, Miigwech.
yeah.
What
And
was the other one, Steve?
Rosemary from Alaska says, we talk about smudging in the morning to not carry the day before. So you're not carrying the energy from the day before with us.
Oh,
I
Miigwech,
think I got that
Allison.
right, Rosemary.
And talk, Steve, for jumping in there and letting me know.
Yes, I didn't know if Doc Foster wanted to comment on anything either. So thank you.
I don't see him on right now. He might have had to run real quick. He'll probably be in and out here today. He's juggling some stuff, and so we're blessed to have him when he is. Yes, and that is part of our spring or New Year's teachings, is that also not carrying that before. Miigwech, for sharing that, Rosemary. It is so important. I think I believe, and from what I see, victim programming and mentality inadvertently teaches us that we can carry this. And tribal ways in so many different teachings shows us that we have to let go at some point. When it's immediate, when it's current, going on, or just happened, that's different. We work through it. And in some things, depending on what it is, takes a process. But there comes a point where we don't want to carry that into the next day. There's a kind of, I don't know, it might be a little vulgar here to say that our old ones was safe. Steve's probably over there cringing. What is she going to say? I'm going to try to say it in a nice way. If you're holding on to caca, and then today comes this blessing, this gift, this opportunity, or we go to hold the hand of another and help another, or have them come hold our hand, or our child's hand, or our love's hand. What happens when we're still holding on to caca? It's going to get on it. It might slip out and we'll lose hold of it, whatever it is. So to be careful with that. And the baggage. Yes, I brought that up in part 1 in January. Today our people have gone to such an opposite of who we are. And that comes with disconnect, right? You're connected to what then? And what spirits are feeding off of that. So you hear these cliches, these slogans, and they're taking it at surface. If you love this person, you will love them and all their baggage. No, we do not. Our teachings talked about what baskets or bundles we bring when we marry, when we come together. What is in your basket? What is in your bundle? Yes, we accept each other's past. We're not going to judge you for the traumas you've been put through, the mistakes you made and reactions to. But the thing is, you must have come up out of it by now. That is the differential. If you're bringing in that baggage, my dad would speak on couples coming together. Here's one, and you stand strong, but a couple comes together and this medicine stands much stronger. We get pulled down and knocked down oftentimes in Indian country, but then we're there to help bring each other up. But if you're coming like this, the other one's going like this the whole time, when something comes to knock down, what's going to happen to that couple? To come together like this, we have to get ourselves right. We have to let go of that baggage so we can now develop and create this life together. Miigwech, Allison, for sharing. Can we go on to the next slide? I don't know if we'll get through all the slides, but I try to make them pretty self-explanatory so you have resources later if you need. And you're welcome to reach out also if you have any questions. So at what point can this cycle be stopped? And I gotta thank Steve. Talk is how you say it in Steve's language, T-A-K-K, and he does so well at learning all of our languages of how to say thanks. So this is Steve's, and that's our ways to come back with it. And so I had to send it from all the images. He had to reformat this for it to work. And the slide didn't show up. So cultural understandings, a chance at change. So at what point can this cycle be stopped? So when we are, an incident occurs to us in life, good, bad, or indifferent, traditionally, we saw this as being gifted. This is a chance, an opportunity. We're driven at this change, at this growth. And so we embraced being able to go through it because Creator gave us all what we needed. And so at what point, if a situation or event occurred, of course, you know, our culture is starting in that eastern door here, and then going clockwise, what played upon when we're looking at the bads, we're looking at our responses and reactions to it, are fed on our fears or our insecurities or false righteousness, or was it anger, fits, or depression? How did we react to this event? How did we move? And then from that, what comes? So I believe this is a tool to kind of use. And again, you guys feel free, and gals, to, you know, redesign it and cater it to what you're working on with an individual or group, to kind of use this mind mapping tool and work through and go, okay, so now what happened? And at what point could you stop? And I believe you'll see, and I'm sure you already see it at any point here. You could catch yourself in the tracks and go, wait a minute. So did you then turn on truth or your know betters and your morals and values because you were busy throwing a fit? And then what were the consequences of that? What occurred? I'm going to pause real quick. I see that Doc Foster is unmuted.
Thank you, Teresa. I'm just going to share just a thought. Is when my mom used to say, "What's the matter, my boy?" And I'd say nothing. I had no idea how accurate I was, because most things that in the material world, part of our teaching is that we're all part of spirit. All of us, all that is part of the fabric of spirit. Only it's not a fabric. It's you know, not even a gas. It's not a solid or a liquid or a gas. It's just part of what is. But in order to for spirit to continue being, it required not spirit. Not spirit is matter, and most of matter is just space. In the simplest form of matter that we have, a woman discovered it in England in early 1900s, and they brought her to Harvard because they wouldn't even allow her to teach over at Oxford because she was a woman. And at Harvard, they never allowed her to become a professor because she was a woman. So she was a lecturer for the next 40 years. But she discovered the most basic element of the universe, of the material universe, is the hydrogen atom. The hydrogen atom in its most common form consists only of a proton and an electron. Now that electron moves very rapidly around the proton, never quite the same. It's always the same distance, but it's never the same movement. Why do I bring that up? Because we talk about change, but change is inevitable. People that tell me they can't change, I tell them, I'm old, I'm pervy, get naked, and I won't look at you, but I'm going to take a picture, and then I want to see your ugly butt in 10 years, and I want you to get naked again. And I'm going to compare the pictures, because you can't stop change in this material life. Change is constant. Even a rock it looks like it's not moving, but it's so full of atomic activity, so full of energy. And if we take the most basic form of the universe, which is the hydrogen atom, if you compromise a single hydrogen atom, you can say goodbye to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We've done horrific things by challenging the energy that holds something with mostly nothing. And so change is part of life. Change is an inevitable part of life for us, for our human life. Death is a part of life. But what matters the most is our life itself. The question is, how will we live? How will we live today as we face change? Thank you, Teresa, for letting me share a little bit from both worlds.
Me, Gwitch, for sharing. I hope I catch every time you're ready and able. So I think you guys get the gist of this. But at the center of it, this is what is being fed. This is what's happening to us, the direction that we're going. So how can we break out of that? And we'll jump on to the next slide, Steve. I know I got so much to get into here. So running like a deer shot. I don't know if you ever heard your old timers say that, or running amok, or run into the water. So cleanse and take in life again instead. And that's kind of what happens. You ever see our people do this, or even yourselves looking back, something happens and you just react, respond, and oh my goodness, the stuff like the last slide that just spirals out from it. So you're running like a deer shot, chicken with its head cut off, whatever you want to say. And here is where we're going from the dysfunctional or the bad situation on the left. And so whatever you guys want to, you guys, again, take these slides and gals and cater them to your situation. Even have folks, you know, you can take the words out all together and write in the situation, and then write in the dysfunctional or the bad choice. So what ends up happening, and do we end up going from one extreme to the other, when in the center here, if we pause, and there's the balanced teachings, the healthy functional choice. Stop, try to find the lesson in it and define what is self about and not. When you're relooking at that situation, whether something happened to you that is really horrible, or your loved one, or you did something and you made this mistake because of what you know and you didn't know, or whatever it was. And what is self about here? What am I about? So you can take stock in what you're not going to allow them to take back, or what you need to get back for yourself when you're ready, or what you don't want to be about. So then getting help and addressing and amending is important. We talk about reconciliation, but we're always looking on the outside. The government took this from this. Yes, these folks did this. These folks are doing this around here. Oh yeah. But reconciliation is to reconcile what? To bring back what that was taken, is what we've been talking about. How much power do we have to take back? They outlawed our gathering, they outlawed our ceremonies, they outlawed, but now we can. We can get out there and just do it. Just do it. So moving forward in the better ways and going from there, you know. So definitely you can't, you might need to be amending self. You might need to be amending when, you know, I still haven't perfected this myself, but when something occurs, it sounds like I'm yelling at the folks when I'm going on about the situation that happened. And a lot of us tend to do that in Indian country. We're not, what a friend of mine at Menominee Reserve would call it, monkism. We're not, we understand what is just is, as Doc Foster was saying earlier. And we're not quite there yet. We get overran by these emotions. And so something happens to me or a loved one, do we get worked up? Do we chime in with getting worked up with a sister or somebody and get all riled up on it and let our emotions carry us away? ACE scores show us what this is doing to our health, our physical health. This isn't okay. We need to take that back. We need to say, this doesn't change the situation, getting worked up about it, and refocus on this moment here. What do we have? And how can we move forward in it in this good way, and just do the best we can and take the lessons out of it and go on and have our day back. Okay, can we go to the next slide, Steve? So this is another take on it, another kind of way to go with it. Our choices and our free will. We're taught that across the board. That is all the spirits can play off of the bad ones. They don't have what we have. They really are powerless. We give it to them and they try to manipulate that. So humility is so important. That is another opening to them. But it also just wasn't our way to run about with ego. We are always been the tribe, which means the people. So the only part about self that we were always so supportive of is your uniqueness, your individuality. No one is greater than another, but we are all gifted. So no one is without. And to remember that our healing is one of the greatest and most powerful things that we are supposed to be doing, as prophesized, to bring ourselves back as a people. And that is, of course, what you notice is being attacked, and that what we're being played upon with this victim programming. So where it's stumping us, we're smarter than that. We come from smarts, way smarter than that. So what can we do? So when a situation occurs, it makes us feel small, helpless, powerless. We run the other way. And sometimes we're seeing these diagnoses of these identity disorders, and you hear people in our communities thinking they're just greater than another. So they're running the other way with it. And that's their wound screaming. So how can we help, or how do we step away and protect ourselves, depending on what you're handling and going on there? And again, the balance, where can we go with it? Because those bad spirits will try to take you from there to there and cause you to skip right here where you can move forward. Next slide, Steve. Talk. So again, back to the balance, and the old ones are very much so in our ways about the being with peace, being in balance, and being protected from the bad beings because of that. So making our peace with things, with life, with our choices, being okay with where we're at. And so again, more of what we could be doing at home to empower ourselves. So no matter what's going on in the world around us, if we keep moving forward in this way, and our cousins now pick it up, and our friends, our kids' friends, some of them are picking this up, how much more momentum does this build in changing those elements like Doc Foster was talking about, in changing that darkness, changing that heaviness, changing that space, and knowing your truth and being at peace with it. So to work through these things and looking back, but once you know better, do better, as they say. And that is how you begin to develop your peace with things and embracing where you are at. So many think they're okay, they're good. And so funny, Doc Foster had said that and shared that story. There it is. And that their spirit tracks, we think that we always think we're the exception too. I'm good, it ain't that bad. But then how come this is happening? How come this has been bugging? How come I've been acting in this way and my growth isn't going in that way? So it does impact no matter what. We are not above or beyond, we are of. So to set those examples, to maybe it helps to think about your ancestors or the old ones watching and seeing you and knowing better. And are you living to that? Would you be proud of yourself looking back when you pass away in spirit? Would you be proud of this you? Would little kid you be proud of this you? Are you truly in you? And I'm talking about your very thoughts, your very choices. It's very important. We'll go on to the next slide. So for the people who are more mathematical, I tried to go, we all learn from different aspects. You hear it in country all over. And I've heard too many people for too many years really upset about people saying they claim to be about these things. Water is sacred, say. So water plus life, and what does water support? All of life. Any living being has water in it. This rock has water in it. If you ever deprive a grandfather of its water, it will become porous, depending on the type of grandfather it is, how quick it does. And it is opening up, trying to get the moisture and the air into it, and it is trying to come back to life. It is trying to survive. It is trying to live. So All of life has water in it. So how are you treating that water? The air has water in it. How are you walking through? We talk about water is sacred. We talk about elders are sacred. Our children are sacred. Well, what happens when you go to lodge? You go to that pipe carrier. How are you behaving and carrying yourself then? How are you checking your thoughts then? We sit a certain kind of way, we walk a certain kind of way, we behave and talk a certain kind of way because we're in a sacred space right now. We're around a sacred person, we're around a sacred pipe. But the thing is, when our old ones left us with that this way of life, our walk is sacred, that means your spirit tracks. It means how you think, how you're being around the children. Because if there's children around, they're sacred. Then how are you thinking? How are you behaving? What are you watching on TV? What kind of music are you listening to? Do you feed sacred beings junk food? Food that would maybe give them chemical imbalances or illnesses? Or would you give them food that would reconnect them to the old ones, to the spirit, to the land in good health? Things like that. So how are we being about if we believe they're sacred? So this is another tool to kind of check ourselves and each other in and look around and treating that as what is sacred. Many of us recognize areas of land where you can just see the darkness. You know something happened there and you find out, yes, something really bad happened there. That is left there, that spirit is left there. It changes that life there, that water there, in the plants, in the land, in the area. It has to be taken care of. It also needs healing. It also needs to recognize what happened there and that we're going to be good around here. We're going to be good and that spirit will be happy. On to the next slide, Steve. Thank you. Talk. So here are some beings, oftentimes today, across the board, I've been noticing that have been demonized. And the little people tend to be really good. Our teachings say that they come from Star Nation initially. There's all different types of little people. And it depends on how you carry yourself around them. You can put on a show how you want, but these beings are old and wise and see your spirit. And they are protecting whatever their job is to protect or care for. And if you're really kind of in that some kind of way, they may handle you. So people could come back with some stories that the little people threw a fireball at them or something like that. Why did this happen? Or misinterpret the little people trying to protect them from something bad that was there they didn't notice. These are petroglyphs on the bottom right, markings. So this goes way back before impact here, before the white folks came over. These go way back. So this shows, this has been in our teachings with tribes across the board about these beings. And it shows stories about them, of what was seen, what was known, what happened. And there's a water spirit. There's all different kinds. We used to have councils with Star Nation beings, and we have prophecies about them coming now. So you may have clients or individuals talking about them coming to them. And is this a mental health issue or is this a spiritual issue? And they just don't know the teachings. They don't know what to do. They don't know. And it's being played with and manipulated because of all the unknown. And maybe their diets and their lifestyle, are they smoking weed too, or are they drinking too? To try to deal with it or escape it. So some of the star beings are told not to be so good, and some are good. This deer woman on the far left, that's somebody's depiction of her, mind you. And she is known to be actually very good. But if you are a man that comes kind of like the white buffalo calf woman for the Lakota, if you are coming in a disrespectful way and you look at her in a disrespectful way, she would handle you. I have some links at the bottom of the presentation where you can read some stories on her in some of the different tribes that have stories about her. Going back to her, I'm very nicely saying handle those men. They would say they were never seen again. On to the next slide, Steve. So we have helpers. Those great beings are our helpers, and we have helpers beyond our old ones, as our prophecies said. Then there's bad beings. new and old ones. And we need to identify where we stand and what you stand for. That's how the best way to start. And I believe we, you know, our ways are very simple. Creator made everything very simple for us. Bads become complex and compound. What's the opposite of it? Simple and solutions. So that's the balanced teaching. So we look at that, and our ways really are very simple. So the best way to depower them and empower self is really to define and identify what you are and are about. You can kind of find then where your openings might be, what might be being played upon, and how to correct that if you're about that or not. You know, your morals, your values, your principles, um, your diet, all of these things are extremely important. Um, and your traumas, you know. And so how do we handle that and deal with that? These bad spirit beings will come in and keep bringing a memory back. So you may have an individual say, I was doing fine, and this memory just kept hitting me out of nowhere. There was nothing triggering it, not smell, not anything triggering it, but it was coming back. So how do we deal with that then? How do we let go of that? And it might be saying things like, I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'll never be loved, I won't be taken seriously, nobody cares, he or she'll cheat on me, they'll leave me. And we have so much of this. Some of it's valid concerns. So then to back it up, do a self-check. You know, is this a stable relationship? You know, all those kind of things. And so what do we do? And are you okay with yourself? Is it healthy? Is it hurting you? And things like that. So to kind of go back and do a self check. Where does self stand on it? And take it away from all of that outside voice and bring your voice back in it. Your heart's voice, your mind's voice, bring it back in where you stand. And then if you're not happy with it, why? Is it because of outside voices and you're trying to please who? And is that really important? Or is it because you want this better quality of life or whatever it is? And then at that point, then you make a plan for what you're going to do and you keep moving forward with it, as our old ones were. Just like seed in a garden, you got to tend to it if you want it to fruit. Okay, the next slide, Steve. These are some of the bad beings you hear about all over Indian country today. And this here, there's that, what some people call him, the hat man, the hooded man. Below him, you know, the shadow man. This is supposed to be a Wendigo in the upper middle one, but he's depiction. And then those kind of those voices and those spirits that, you know, on the far right talking to you when you're trying to rest. The bottom middle one is kind of those PTSDs, those traumas, that baggage that is we're holding on to. Spirit can step into those memories and start feeding and playing like we were just talking about, where it just keeps reoccurring and breaking you down and beating you down. The bottom right one also is supposed to be a Wendigo or a Hoofman that we're seeing as well. And so not to feed into it, do not tap into them. If we can go on to the next slide, Steve. Like the bear teaches us, we are aware of our surroundings, but we will not be nudged or moved quicker or slower or stopped in our path until you are a threat. When you are a threat, we deal with the threat. And once the threat's dealt with, the bear will go right back on path and at its pace. So it's the same thing with the bad spirit beings. We are not to tap into them. And look at them that way. That was the best thing that we could do. We acknowledged what we were dealing with and we self-checked. Why is it here? What is our openings for it to be here, and how do we get it out of here? You can smudge all you want, and it will maybe in the immediate handle it, but if you're feeding that spirit, that door is open, it can come back. The false or unnatural worlds, the elders talked about this often. And you know, there is the what is natural, what creator created. There is natural spirit worlds. And with that, we can move through that. It is natural. Creator is in that space. Creator is in every breath we're taking right now. And we're taking him in. And as I speak, as words have power, Creator's ear is right here. And he is hearing everything I am saying. So in this natural world, in this natural space, we're with Creator. In that unnatural world is something that came from either those bad Star Nation beings that were spoken about, or something man-made, and or something a bad made. But it takes our thoughts away, it takes our dreams away. I'm going to pause real quick. Dr. Foster, did you want to?
I'm going to throw in a little more some additional science. We talk about the natural world and we talk about natural law. And you know, it's interesting when Columbus sailed in the harbor, some of you've heard me say this before, he couldn't have been to a more different culture. For example, in a dominant society culture, religion matters. I'm not saying religion doesn't matter, but in our culture, spirituality is what connects us to the universe. And I talked about the simple hydrogen atom. If you compromise the connection of that tiny, if you used a football field as an example of the hydrogen atom, the proton would be the size of a gumball on a 50-yard line, and the electron would be moving very rapidly around it, in almost making a shell around it. But you compromise the energy that holds that electron to that proton, and you have literally a nuclear reaction. Now, when I talk about a nuclear reaction, that's energy that's way disproportional to what you think would be there with just one tiny little electron and one itsy bitsy proton. And most of what we call the material world consists of these little atoms and molecular connections. Why do I mention that? Because even those of us that are talking today, I ask how many people have ever had the flu, and everybody will raise their hand, because I'll say, how many healers do we have in a room? Nobody will raise their hand. We're modest. Indian people are really modest. And, but Becky's not modest. She's listening in the background. She said, not me. But every one of you have had the flu, but you recovered from it. Some of us are recovering from COVID, and some of us recovered, some of us didn't. But my point is, our brain did not get the flu. How did our brain avoid getting the flu? And so what do, us smart Indian people? Well, our Steve mentioned earlier in the set with me that we're 70% water, just like the Earth's surface is. And we have this amazing phospholipid bilayer around the brain. And it doesn't allow, it keeps molecular concentrations from entering the brain that are foreign to it. And it works so well that very few of us have had encephalitis or meningitis or any kind of brain diseases because the blood-brain barrier, because of the phospholipid bilayer. When I first said those words, my auntie, who's Pentecostal, said, hallelujah. I said, no, we're not speaking in tongues, auntie. We're using scientific terms. And so this, for those of you that are Pentecostal, this is not glossolalia. These are just science terms. But if you change H2O, which is water, which is basic to so much of us, and H2O goes right through the phospholipid bilayer because the brain is even more than 70% water. So if you want to hear the ocean, just do this real fast. You can hear all that liquid moving inside your brain skull. How awesome is that? Those of you that are ocean people. That's a bad joke, but laugh anyway. My kids say, keep your day job, Dad. But if you add ETOH, and that'll go right through the phospholipid bilayer too. That happens to be ethanol. That happens to be alcohol. To your body, lots of your body, it allows alcohol to go anywhere water goes. Is alcohol water? No, it's poisonous. Why do you feel better when you take alcohol in? Because it literally kills brain cells. And the brain cells it kills first are those that are associated with higher judgment and reasoning. Now, our brain is remarkably resilient, and those cells will recreate. Any of you that ever had a dream, that's what's happening during dream time. Your brain, the cells that are dying are putting their information in a new cell that is being born. And then that cell completely eats itself. How amazing is that? I never thought I'd be a scientific nerd, but it is. The reason I'm saying this, because our most complex atoms are the nuclear atoms. They're very complex. They're called heavy metals, and they'll kill you. The radiation will kill you. The radioactivity will kill you. And so we have combinations of molecular combinations, and we say carbon is basic to all of life forms. So any of you that took organic chemistry, you learned all about all the combinations, what attracts, what attaches, how these atoms come together to form molecules. And it's interesting because this subdivision exists with all of us. We take on burdens that aren't even ours, but they are, because at the right time we take them on. And without that negativity, the polarity, the positive and negative matters. And the balance of the positive and negative matter. Thanks for letting me throw in some geek stuff.
Oh my goodness, me gwitch for that. I was hoping you would. I love it when he abuses himself here. So today you see a lot of these folks and these unnatural false worlds are creating actual type of worlds, but you're not going to find creator in that space or anything good. It's going to be a trick, an illusion, and it's taking our people away. So many of our people are running away into these worlds. Our children, even our adults, whether it's TV, superhero stuff. I hear adults today saying, who are parents, even now grandparents, saying they really want to be a superhero. And so where are we at with that? And what would cause our people to want to go to that space? And the video games, the anime, and it's changing our dreams, it's changing our thoughts. Our stories are sacred and our people are hungry for them across the board, but yet going to the quick fix and are caught up in these stories with false aspirations. And then we're not putting our dreams into really putting the amount of energy into looking at the actual stories. We are that 7th generation story. How cool is that? We are of the prophecies. So we are creating that story that 7 generations ago has been waiting on and up to. And so we are the stories where it's time to change that. And of course, then we're going to be bombarded by the bads, what they call the spirit war time that we would be in the midst of. Why wouldn't we? When we're have this power to turn around what the bads don't want. So do we say, hey, all I got to do is this, and keep persevering through? Those who know the teachings know that many of us won't remember our creation, but when we are born, we asked to be here. We asked to be of the tribe we were, to be in the place we're in. And no, it doesn't make the hardships and the weight of it we go through that matter, that takes space within us and impacts us in our lives. It doesn't change that fact. So it doesn't make it easier, but to know that means we were given the ability to persevere through it. In the end, we're going to be okay. No matter what comes, to keep going about in this way, we're going to be okay. Can we jump on to the next slide, Steve? So here, this one kind of goes on about how to make the best medicine out of when it's okay to not be okay. So you hear today, it's okay to not be okay. Again, we're taking things at the surface and running to the extreme with it. We have parents and grandparents who are saying, I've got anxiety, I've got depression, and so they won't deal with the traumas and the dysfunction that they created with their now adult children and grandchildren are living with, because the therapist said it's okay for them, it's just too much and I can't deal with that. And I permanently will be working on this so I permanently can just be about myself. And I hear all over it in country, because a part of victim programming and mentality, our people are waiting till last minute to pay their power bill, pay their propane, get it filled up. And so I'm an emergency, I'm above everybody because I've been not taking care of things. And when the rest of the world around them, and then we say, how come these folks, and it turns in this vicious cycle of not feeling good about ourselves. How come they're on top of it? How come they don't have these problems? How come the white folks are talking about us that run the propane company and are saying, them natives are never getting it filled up, and you can feel this tension, but they don't understand you're bogged down by this hurt and you don't even want to brush your teeth. You just want to go to bed and call it the day. But at what point do we keep letting it kill us in our life, or do we pick up and say, this is my life now, that stopped happening this long ago and I am going to move forward? So when the incident just occurs or just came back, especially with a lot of people in Indian country, we have so much hitting us. So you may have moved on because something else was hitting you in life, and then you were juggling with that, and then something hit your kid, and then you had to deal with that at work or at school. And so this came back finally, or something triggered it that brought it back. And so if something just came back, that's different. That is kind of a now moment. Or if like I said, the incident just occurred. This is kind of the gist of it. I think you guys know pretty well in your backgrounds what to do. But of course, the self-care plan, stop immediately, safety, check safety first, and then the self-care. What can I do? What's going to get knocked down about me, especially right now with, the viruses going around. When you're stressed out, your immune system takes a toll, it takes a blow. So what can we do to care for our elders? Back in the day, when people would have some hardship or some trauma occur, or a loss of a loved one, it didn't have to be from dysfunction or injustice, they would show up and they would be bringing some fish soup. They would show up and they would be making some good tea, and they would be helping to care over there. So what were they caring for and tending to? So these are the things, the impacts, the tolls, and you weren't alone. I see Doc Foster's unmuted. I'm going to pause.
As Teresa's sharing, and we talk about part of what I'm trying to say through quote science, but I really consider science just natural law. What I'm trying to say is everything's connected. Everything's related. In our dominant society, everything is objectified and transactional. A rock is a rock. A rock's not a living being. A rock's not full of water, full of energy, and so if that's how you see it, that's all you can get from it. But if you realize that a rock is alive, and we used to collect little medicine rocks, and Marcita, some of you probably have collected a few of these, and they can go, they're like a feather. You can have that rock in your medicine pouch and it's not there, it left you. Teresa was talking about medicine, and it comes and goes. There's a life to all of these things. The spirituality is the gravity that connects us to the universe, connects us to everything. We're all related. Mataku Yeoyas, and we're all connected, whether you realize it or not. And so when I mentioned about Columbus, Becky, when Columbus came, so we confuse spirituality with religiosity. And if you have religiosity, good for you. I mean, that can help you and that can have good outcomes. But beliefs are the most powerful, and your beliefs determine what you even notice. As I'm talking, you're thinking 10 to 12 times as fast as I'm talking, except for those of you who are meth users, you're thinking 20 times as fast as I'm talking, unless you're done with a tweak, and then you're thinking maybe 1 to 2 times as fast. But those are all changes through chemistry. But what determines what you think? And you have a filter called a reticular activating system in your midbrain that determines what's personally useful and what isn't. So your beliefs filter out what you even notice. And we always said that what our white relatives call nature, that's our university. We're part of nature. We're not the boss of nature. We're part of nature. We're a piece of nature, dependent on everything that come before us. And if we don't realize how we're all connected and related, what she talked about, carrying our caca or poop around, but poop is fertilizer for all kinds of plants. How cool is that? Even our waste products is useful for some other part of our relatives. How awesome this life can be. And so even those hard things for us can be the opportunity for renewal, the opportunity for new life, the opportunity for reawakening. So I really encourage all of you to trust Tunkashla Wakantaka, trust Creator, trust God, trust your higher power, trust the relationship matters. And the thing that I want to say as I be quiet here again is even the ego cannot pull its body so that the wind can carry it above its problems. The way you catch an eagle is with its appetite. That's how you catch an eagle. Stake a couple little goats to the ground or stake some bunnies to the ground and not let the eagle fly away with it. And if you get it enough food, it'll eat right there and you can throw a blanket over it. You got yourself an eagle for a while. How bad is that? Don't shoot it, guys, but you don't, that's how you catch an eagle, through your appetites. That's how we get caught too. Eagles have amazing vision and they have strong appetites. And even some of you with great wisdom and stuff, if you look, we used to say, if what you look at the most to own you. When I was little, I'd see the old people give away really beautiful rings and beaded things and stuff. How awesome is that? Because they didn't want to be owned by their things. They kept it moving. And when you receive something like that, you had an obligation to pass that on to somebody else of equal or greater value within the year, so that you weren't owned by things. Our healing is not something we do to people. It is not transactional. You owe me $10 because I came and did, you obogged me. You gave me some tobacco, and so now you owe me because I healed you. I don't heal anybody. Healing is something we do with people. Healing is something we get to witness with people. And we do it in relationship, and we do it in connection, not just relationship with people, but relationship with the earth, with the water, with the fire, with the air. How? Thank you, Tree.
Geez, me witch for that eagle teaching, because I'm Eagle Clan. So letting me know my weakness there. If I see a gift laying out there, I'm going to look now to see what's attached to it. You're muted. You're muted, Dad.
The only way the eagle rises above that is for each hair to adhere to the hair next to it on the feather. That's the only way. It can't adhere to the hair it would prefer over there. It has to adhere to the hair right next to it. And if each if each hair adheres to the hair next to it, the eagle can flap its wings and rise above whatever would grab it, whatever would capture it. And the only way we can rise above our problems as people is for each of us to adhere to that one right next to us. Not the one over there, not the one over there, not the one we'd prefer, but the one right next to us. And only in that way can we use this amazing vision that Tunkashla gave us, this amazing gift that Creator gave us, only when we each adhere to the one next to us. And I hope as you say that, you feel some of the Dachulakaskaskan of our Hojokalaka. Well, I'll be quiet. Some of you know what I just said, and most of you don't. I don't even know. That was spirit talking through me. No, I don't. You'll know about the circle of life, and you'll know about the energy which is our spirit, the energy which connects and inspires and enables and renews and heals. And the only reason that matters to some of us is because we hurt so bad. We hurt so bad. And so now when we have a response to our hurt, a joy for our pain, we're so thankful. And we have such gratitude to discover every one of us in the Indian way. We don't talk about God, we talk with God. How cool is that? We don't talk about religion, we talk directly to source. How cool is that? So thank you.
So if we can jump on to the next slide, I think they kind of get this here. I'm going to throw Doc Foster back on if you can. This is a study that just came out, so I put the link to it up there, and it's something that's kind of come to me a few years ago, similar to CTEs in Indian country, but it's due to trauma. And they did a study with some mice on it that is showing we can actually prove it and map it. And I think it's much like our teachings about the disabilities or imbalances. And I think the Lakota story of the grass dance boy, the lame boy, is a great on this. So if Doc Foster is able to jump in there in a couple capacities, he'd be more appropriate to speak on it.
I'm not going to share that much about it, but when we moved camp, the camp movers, we would do the lodges and move the lodges, and the grass dancers would knock the grass down so we could set up camp. So grass dancers had a pretty important role for the prairie tribes as they would set up for the new camp. So the grass dancers would sweep and move, and not just with the prayer and a song and with the rhythm of the feet and all, but actually knock the grass down enough that we could set up camp right there. And we would set up camp long enough. Now, remember, we always wanted to be what, upstream or downstream of the buffalo herds. We stayed fairly close to the animals, to the herds. We wanted to be upstream. We didn't want to catch their poop and all the stuff that happened when they were in the water. We didn't want to be drinking that or washing our clothes in that or bathing in that or anything like that. So we lived in harmony with our relatives, and we paid attention to what they were doing and where they were going, and we moved with them. But the grass planters have a very important role of preparing the community for the new camp, for making the new camp. And I'm not going to go into specifics, but realize that our impairments are also blessings. Part of Wolakota is those negative things that we say, why me? And we do our pitiful thing. And my wife says, get off the cross, Dan. Christ already was crucified. As she tries to remind me that I can't replace Christ, which I know that, I know I can't. But it's not, there's no pride in our victimhood. We're all miracles. We're all marvelous expressions of creation. When I was young, when I first started talking to the helpers, I thought you had to earn talking to helpers. And so I didn't believe I was worthy. So when I finally heard from them, I said, why are you talking to me now? They said, we've always talked to all of you at all times in all ways. I said, really? How come I didn't hear you? They said, because you didn't believe you were worthy. So folks, work on your beliefs. Allow your beliefs to allow you to talk with Tunkashla Wakantaka, with Ate Wakantanka. Allow what Teresa was talking about earlier, see the sacredness, recognize the sacredness in life itself, in water, in earth, in fire, in air. Recognize the sacredness in each moment. Recognize the sacredness in this difficulty right now, the difficulty that we're having, and we don't give Wopila because I'm hurting. No, we give Wopila that this pain can help me through the experience of it become the human being that I came into this life to be. In this life right here, it's only limited. It's not all that long. It's not like eternity, like spirituality is. But without death, there is no eternity. Without weakness, there is no strength. Without sickness, there is no healing. Every one of you bring medicine. Every one of you are healers, whether you realize it or not. Even if we bring sickness, we're healers. Even if I'm the example of substance use disorder in my community, people can point to me and say, look, Dan was really educated. He's really smart. And look what this did to him. Look at this. Learn from Uncle Dan. Learn from him. You know, you don't. Even a smart, strong man like that can be an idiot when he's under the influence. Thank you, Teresa.
Miigwech for sharing. I did notice those use that work as therapists, activists, things like that. Um, I notice a response already, and you know how it tends to be textbook across the board in any country on so much. This here study that came out, it could really feed victim programming and mentality is my concern, because it can show the actual damages done in the brain, the neurological damages. But as Doc Foster spoke on earlier, it can repair itself. Proper diet is so important. Dealing with your life, your stressors, the dysfunctions is another importance. Cognitive therapy approach, so consistency, as somebody spoke on in the chat, and so the whole, the being in that true way can really help. But the reaction I saw was they ran amok, like vindicated. Look what happened to me, and was gonna stop right there in it and say now, and this was a nurse, look what happened to me, and felt so vindicated in this is why I'm struggling. But the thing is, like the lame boy of the Lakota grass dance in Anishinaabe ways, creator says, for any imbalance you have, any disability you are born with or develop, the balance teachings, the universal law teachings, our amazing bodies will try to balance itself back out. So you will develop another gift. We also know in our teachings, it takes a lifetime to learn these gifts. So it isn't something, boom, it's going to be hard for that individual. But this study shows that mouse leader who they traumatized, it caused a problem in the neural wiring, and it caused a block. And the mouse wasn't able to eat with both hands anymore, but it learned to eat with one hand. So then they saw with the neurons that the brain tried to find another way. Now, depending on these traumas, that you went through and how you relate things, how your development went, where it will be in that individual's brain. So everybody's won't be textbook. So get to know that individual. And again, the upside, the positives, the goods is what's going to save. So what are their perks? What are their interests? What is it they're good at? Those kind of things, because that's going to be the part of the brain that the brain is going to naturally pull on, try to help them compensate. So try to help them find a way. So there is a way to come up out of this, but this helps us to see finally in Indian country, I believe, that is it true neurological or mental health issues that we're dealing with? And where is it? Why is it? Why are you feeling stumped? Why are you feeling like you just can't get beyond it, or things like that, when you actually are? Sometimes people are doing the work and they are letting go. Every ounce of them wants it gone. So what is happening here? And maybe it is this. So to look at that and know that the upside was the brain will try to help you find another way and even create it. So what is the new thing? What's going on? What are you able to do now? And yeah, you're not going to be good at it just like that. How do we support that? So I think you guys get the gist of it. But it is exciting to me that they finally are. This is just they're scratching the surface. Eh? Can we jump on to the next slide? Miigwech, Steve. So of course, going back to this definition of principles and our morals are and things like that. So just to try to redefine, it's a part of reconciliation. It's a part of decolonization. It's a part of our traumas. It's a part of taking ourselves back. What happens if you suffered childhood molestation or rape? And you're looking around as a kid and you feel like everybody can see you. Everybody sees your wound. You look around as a teenager, you're different. You stand out. And as you get older, you start to feel like, I wish I could have had that never happen and get me back, as if I could live a life as if I never was touched. Well, we can. We can. And we can look at what were we about? What were we before that? What was taken away? And how do we get that back? Always safety first. So healthy boundaries, healthy filters. And we look at that and then we go, now I'm safe to come out, right? So redefining is a great thing to do that. And we jump on the next slide. And doing this with each other, trauma response and victim programming, just being bogged down with so much injustice, we can get ready to scrap. So the shadow man and some history on it. This actually popped up, on Spirit Works. And I didn't know who J.R.R. Tolkien was. Some people got pretty excited when they heard the name, so I had to go look him up. And but in doing so, I found the history truth started to come out. This shadow man that people are seeing all over Indian country and having him whisper really horrible things at them and play on their depression, play on their anxiety, stuff like that, actually comes from Europe. So we inherited some of these bad beings, and it came with their traumas. They were traumatized over in Europe and then came on over here long before. And then the traumas that they occurred over there, they brought over here and did to us, right? So we inherited that being, and to know where he comes from. I thought it was kind of interesting, this little poem that was written by him. The bads in our teachings, they say, give you a nugget of truth. So to find that nugget of truth in there, but we would not and still should not attach to the shadow being. And the story in this poem kind of tells on that, kind of tells what happened, that this young lady was out on the beach and she was in the moonlight and she just was in such a good space, and then she's seen that dark, like we sometimes see the darkness over our reserves, and got sucked in. What is that? And we can see that in each other now, and living with this wound or feeding that spirit, and we get attached to it. We develop this attachment if we emotionally are trying to pick up on and feel or understand and connect in that kind of way, instead of sitting out and looking at it and working with our great spirits and our ancestors and our know-betters and our teachings. And you can see that's how she got sucked in, how he attached to her, and he needed her. So this also shows that nugget of truth that even their bad beings need us. It needs us. It needs our life, our energy in order for it to have this life, have this. So it goes on like that. And I thought it was interesting. And then when you look at this Tolkien, where did he get this nugget of truth from about this being? He was back from, I believe it was World War II time even. And our people are seeing this here today and knew nothing about that over there then. This guy knew nothing about this guy then. And we've been stories of them seeing him since. So this brings a lot of validity to it. If we can jump on to the next slide, Steve. So I put a little bit more on that Tolkien, the history, the links on that and about him and the correlations with him. He was surrounded by Christianity, I believe, adopted in that way. And in around war, he suffered illness, physical illness that did impact the brain, and some other similar authors that did, like Winnie the Pooh, connected to that animal world and things like that. They also too, and that's the European side. So we have a lot that we have in common. This do not fall prey. So this is what our elders would talk about. Again, it kind of reiterates on things like not connecting to those bad beings, to the darkness, to the negativity, not trauma bonding, and things like that, not falling into the trap of letting our, like Doc Foster just shared with the eagle teaching, for an eagle's feathers to split like that, he must have got his feathers ruffled or already started fighting. So he got himself worked up. In order for him to smooth out them feathers, he's got to prune them. He's basically got to stay calm, and he's got to take off all of that just was put on him, and he can flap away like he said. So I got to sit on that story a little bit he shared with me, because we do represent in ways oftentimes our clans, and that's is how we understood and looked at the world, these teachings, and kind of got that, because in today we've become so surface, so cookie cutter. But to look at that story about that eagle and that rabbit put out there and in the field, so it's a trap. And sometimes people trap you. They try to engage you. They try to push your buttons. And then what spirit are we feeding? What's happening to me physically? ACE scores shows. So do we allow ourselves? How were our elders about it? And our old ones before impact, they did not get worked up. They were what Menominee chum of mine would call monkism. They were so about it. What is okay. This is the problem. This is where they're choosing to be at. This is what we're going to have to do then. And we go and counsel on it. And we talk with spirit, and we listen to spirit, and we listen to our teachings and our know-betters, take our lessons, and we move forward then with that. So this kind of gets a little bit into those tips and of how to work with our people and how not to get sucked in, how to not be depowered by them, and how to get re-empowered. And this also, it plays so much on our traumas. If we can jump onto the next slide, Steve. So here's more of this not to fall play, and more, this is the little bit about that shadow man and what we inherited. So like I told you, you can see that the above links a little bit about him. You could do your own research. This is just one I found right off the bat. I looked at a few and they all said basically the same thing. If we can jump on to the next slide. But knowing our enemies, our peoples, we're always about knowing your enemy. But we, when it comes to bad spirits, do not know our enemy by connecting to them ever. We are not going to try to take them on. Dealing with that has never been a war that you pick up arms for, even though you want to, like, if you could take a bubble of that spirit or that moment or whatever it is and pop it one. I think a lot of us have felt that, but that isn't how we beat it. It's in here. And that's why it's trying to push those buttons, why it's trying to get you to jump and get froggy. And so here it is, a little bit more into it, from victim to victor. And so you can see kind of how they're playing on our thoughts. And that's often what the Wendigo does, even in our teachings, how they get in from ego to not trusting in self and spirit. Like Doc Foster said, that disconnect. of the goods, and definitely the connection to the bads. So starting to be free when I discovered that cage was made out of thoughts, and that is the trap, and that's what they're doing. They know that these beings are old beings and know that. And so this here goes a little bit into that, and I just wanted to share it with you. And it says, I can't explain the past, yet I don't have to. I just have to learn from it and choose to be and do more. So this does take us from victim mentality to victor mentality. So not to allow those that hurt us and took us down, the elders would say, would come in, okay, this individual hurt you and your family, and you're hurt right now if it just happened or if it was in the past. This hurt you're holding, that's not yours. Were you holding it before they came in and hurt you? What were you holding? What were you having kind of life? What were you moving towards and dreaming about? That is yours. This hurt is theirs. That is theirs off path. Where you're heading now, where you're losing that dream and that life you were heading for and your days you were having and evenings, that is what they didn't have. That goes back to them, the elders would say, my father would say, that is theirs. But you don't engage in that spitefulness of spirit. Now that's another going the opposite way with it, and doing things out of spite, that is another kind of losing your heart still. And so you send that to creator. This isn't mine. This isn't mine. This is theirs. Creator will do with it. I send this back to where it came from. And you start taking back what is mine. Where was I? And where was I going? And like Doc Foster said, these can be gifts too. I'd rather, and our elders would rather our gifts come from spirit and come from the goods, come from all this ways. But sometimes we're handed what we're handed and we can make the best out of it. And that really depowers those bads. But not to do it because it depowers those bads. Because now we have this added knowledge, this added gift, this added strength, this added whatever it is. Yes, we have this bad too that came with it. Maybe it impacted our physical health, but also like Doc Foster said, our cells as we're resting are changing. So what can we do with that? How can we support those healthy cells? Doing everything we can. I see Doc Foster came back on camera. Did you want to jump in there? Okay, you're good. And so the balance teachings and the wolf, this was a slide people kind of seem to like a little bit. Do not mistake the wolf as being bad. As an Anishinaabe, we're just like the wolf in ways. So to look at it that way, and I love my Ingan. I love our wolf, and we are much like them. What happens if that wolf's backed up into a corner? What happens if that wolf is abused or mistreated, or is the one left last to eat in the pack? How does that wolf begin to behave? So these are often trauma responses. And, so here's the good, and this was from the original presentation in January that we did. And so this slide is from that. And then this is the bad, the kind of the trauma response is what we're looking at. Do we want to go that direction? Let's catch ourselves. What could we be doing instead? And so if we can jump onto the next slide there, Steve. Let me quit. Thought I made another one like that. So working in helping in the fields, or being a servant, as some people see it. The difference between helping and the sickness of a victim. So, it's always been of the people. We have our roles. Some people call it a servant. We have our duties, our responsibilities, and some of us are helpers. Some of us are healers in that way, where we're working in that and shedding that light on, or whatever it is. There is a difference again, so be careful. And we can see our people even doing this between decompartmentalizing and disassociation. So what happens with that? And the victim programming again. So it gets a little bit more into that, and then how not to fall into that trap, and what you can do for yourself and for those you're working with that you may be recognizing this. So the healthy, there is a difference with decompartmentalizing, especially in Indian country, because we have so much going on. Our statistics says that none of us are above or it can escape dealing with some sort of trauma and dysfunction or injustice. If it isn't us, it's our sister. If it isn't us, it's our mother in that nursing home. If it isn't us, it's our uncle. If it isn't us, it's our children. If it isn't us, it's our cousins or our nieces or our nephews. So it's some way it's hitting us. And so we're able to look at the difference of how do we keep going forward? How do we do all of this that we've been talking about here today and keep moving forward and keep going, okay, and I'm not going to get worked up, and then boom, and I'm not going to get worked up, and you try to take another step, and boom, and you pick yourself back up. I got this, and I'm going to drop this one now out my hand to wait a minute, and another one comes in your hand, and another one, wait a minute, I haven't had a chance to get this out of my hand, all this caca. And so what do we do? And I haven't had a chance to process it. Another caca came. So what do we do now? And so we decompartmentalize, or we start to disassociate at some point. We got to protect ourselves, or our bodies, our minds, our spirits, our heart's going to do it for us. So we are going to take stock here. It's okay to pull back. It's okay to go for a drive and go to a spot. It's okay to go find your favorite person that you can console, and it's okay to take that moment. And it's not only okay, it's kind of the best that you can do in that moment, because if things are hitting, they may keep hitting. Just check safety at that point. Everybody okay, and this is what I can do now. I'm going to get a hold of this person, and maybe take your family with you. Let's go sit, and here, let's bring some dinner. Let's bring something healthy, or as we're going to take their night. So this is what we can do. So if we can, Doc, Costa, you want to jump on?
Just to follow up with what Teresa, and to finish some things I was saying earlier, for example, belief is very, very powerful, and often you can't even say what your beliefs are. You can say what they aren't. But when people tell me what they believe, really what people do is they show me what they believe. So I can watch your life, I can listen, I can watch, I can feel. You'll show me your beliefs. So you might speak of your aspirations, but those aren't necessarily your beliefs. It was always so odd to me when I first got my doctorate and first got licensed. If I could pass these tests, I can now work with your families. And you didn't even know my character or anything. How odd. We wouldn't even let you pour the water in a sweat lodge if we didn't know your character, if we didn't know your beliefs, thoughts, words, and actions, if we didn't have an idea. It's just so interesting to me, the difference between these worlds. But thoughts, words, and actions reflect belief. And so in this dominant society, it's not unusual for us to start, okay, you behave yourself, you act like. It's not about acting, it's about being. We're human beings, not human actors. We're not human doers. We're human beings. So take a look at what Teresa's saying. Look at your thoughts. Do those thoughts reflect your belief? Is that a belief you can embrace? Our culture, our long-held values, my kids say, oh, you adults are such hypocrites. I said, not really. I said, those values are like the lodge poles that keep the covering and protection, keep the lodge up around us. And not any one of us has all of those virtues, but as a people, we have all of those virtues. So within our community, all those virtues are expressed, and those values are all part of the lodgepole. In our humanity, we have limitations, substance and limitation that goes with humanity. So look at how you're connected with others. What are your beliefs? Work on your beliefs and realize that your life will tell you. Another thing that mammals tend to do is we tend to master things. When I first got into psychology back in the 60s, we trained rats and pigeons. It was called Skinnerian instrumental behavioral psychology. And the pigeons, you could really chain behaviors by random reinforcement through food. First, you'd starve them to 80% of what their weight was the first week. And then you'd give them food every time they'd make a move that you wanted them. And you could teach rats and pigeons to play piano, to do all kinds of things, except over time, they would gradually return to being pigeons and rats. So good luck trying to make a pigeon or rat be something that it's not. And good luck with human beings too. In the Christian world, they call that sinful nature, but your human nature is simply that. It's your human nature. You're a species also. And so you'll revert to species behavior. But realize that every one of us are equally connected to Unchi to Grandmother Earth. Take your shoes off. Take a walk out in the woods. Take a walk in the prairie. Take a walk in the swamp. Take a walk in the grasslands. Feel Unchi feel grandmother. All of us are equally connected to Creator. No one of us is any closer than anyone else. We might have different interests and we might have mastered, but part of how we master things is by repetition. And sometimes we master. How many of you had little kids? Read that book again. They've already memorized the book. They know what the book says before you read it. You get tired of the book. You get tired of that video. You get tired of that song. The bear that jumped, what was that song, that Jack Gladstone song that my kids would always sing again and again and again? Well, repetition. We master misery, and we master joy, and we master lots of things. So don't be ashamed of mastery. Don't be ashamed of it. Allow the person that you become because of it. Like Steve said, some of our most difficult times become medicine down the road for people that weren't even born yet when we were having those difficult times. And we can help give them reassurance, and we can help not do something to them. We can be with them at those moments, and let the energy that we bring, let the energy of the food. We're neurochemical beings, guys. What we put in is what we are. How fascinating. Well, thank you, Teresa. Lovely presentation. Thank you, Steve.
Me, Gwitch Doc Foster. So yes, we inherited some bad beings. We inherited some good ones, and we have our own, and we knew how not to feed them. We didn't get all worked up when we told the stories of. We actually often didn't even talk on them. We talked on the lessons. We talked on how to depower. We talked on how to empower ourselves, and we connect to the goods. So our people today, through learning with trauma bonding, we're finding that. So a part of decolonization is to recognize, depower, and define. So what again are we about and not, and then stepping up and back into our roles as spiritual peoples. Our many tribal people are more that sense to pick up on things is there. So we develop these stronger connections in ways where we can feel, whether it's a parent can feel on their children, our siblings, we can feel things coming off of them, our spouses, we are given this beautiful gift, this connectivity with our spouses, or that we're with, and it kind of enhances that. So good, bad, or indifferent, and it was meant to be a wonderful and beautiful gift. But if we are in a bad way, we are also connecting to those bads that they're connected to. So again, we need to keep ourselves and each other accountable, and the focus on these good things and what we can do. Again, as we kind of went on, the elders would say, the bads will try to stop you or redirect you. So if you're onto something good, if you're doing growth, the bads are the ones to test you, not the goods. The goods support, the goods gift, the goods nudge, the goods, things like that. But the bads will test you and see, are you really about this? And so like Doc Foster said, is that really what your values are about? None of us are perfect, and we're here to do that growth. We're here to do that. And so this is a great thing then, that we grow beyond it. Some of it's inherited, this generational trauma and dysfunction, that we grow beyond it. So the bads again are going to say, oh, are you really about that? Let's see. And maybe put somebody in your life, or have somebody walk by and see, do you get jealous, or what are your standards really about that material world? Is that really how you gauge success or doing well, or are you really feeling blessed and happy with what you do have? So things like that, all the way all the way down the line. I'm sure you guys can, figure that out. Goods, so the natural norms that produce the fruits of self. Diet is so important. So like Doc Foster said, what we feed ourselves, from TV to music to games to where our thoughts go in our daydreams, to the company we keep around us and in our circle, we were always careful of culturally, down to our diets, what we're eating. I don't know if you ever heard about the food allergy test, but a lot of our people lack the gene to digest or process dairy. It does not mean your lips are going to swell up and your chest is going to close, your airways. But what happens is it messes with the chemicals in your brain and the hormones, and your children, your adults. I learned that with my own family and witnessed the test being done. They said will respond one of two ways. Either he or she will come off and just start crying when they expose them with that little bit of dairy, and get very emotional, or get very upset, in short, kind of angry. And my daughter responded both ways. And it was almost immediate. We've been being fed dairy for how long? So this is how we think we normally feel. The aspirations that we lose, our energy, our will, plus on top of it, the health problems that it's causing. So to really look at the holistic of the individual or ourself or our loved one, what we can be changing, it takes about a good steady 3 months of keeping whatever out of our diet, fried foods as well. I like to call it our soldier fort rations. The bad glutens, things like that. It really is causing mental health, behavioral health, like mocking and mimicking it. But over time, because it is changing your chemistry and causing other chemicals to produce, our brain is like a computer. So then it starts to create what issues. And we've been dealing and seeing life from the scope because we've been feeding ourselves what. So now we've been responding from there. Now we've been wiring ourselves how to perceive, how to react, storing memory of incidences. And so it becomes, but is it a true root issue? But then again, what is it going to take? Then the same consistency to make those changes. So staying on top of it, ourselves, each other, and supporting that good, healthy change, making maybe it exciting to reconnect to cultural diets the best that you can. And then here's the bad side of it. What you end up losing. So to look at it kind of that way, and again, take these slides, reword it, cater it towards the situation or the group or the topic or the lesson, and have fun with it. Definitely have fun with it. Can we jump on the next slide, Steve? Talk. So again, this is a little bit, we walked in truth, how we were talking on, we held each other accountable. This is more of our cultural ways. This is a slide from in January from part 1 on matter. So what really matters to us, all the way down to it does develop matter. So when we say these values, these morals, this matters if so-and-so treats me like this or my kids like that, but like Doc Foster said, does it really matter to you? Because how are you treating folks? How are you thinking about the situation when the roles are reversed? But matter, when we talk about it, this matters, that matters. We either are saying it with so much heart and the beauty, or we're saying it with this matters. And so however we're saying it with emotion. So now we're talking about our heart. In order for our mind and our heart to be talking back and forth, there's some chemistry going on there. And so now we're looking at the physiological of it, the neurological of it. It is taking shape and form and impact. Matters. So it matters that he or she did this. That takes place in us. Is this a sickness, an upsetting feeling? What was there before that? What was the flow of life before that matter occurred? What matter was there? So to take back again, and I know this is, and it doesn't seem fair at times. It feels like when you're going through it, I'm the victim here. Why do I got to be the one to take it back? They owe me, but will they give it back? Who has the power? And that's another part where we would dissect it and the elders would look at it. That's where we look at justice. Traditionally, innately, we feel like our old ones would have handled that situation for that. But today that often isn't happening. So that kind of creates another injustice. But once we understand that truth, why is something in there keeps saying this, then we may understand and go, oh, and we look at where it really is today. Okay, what do I want then? Sit here upset about this or go on with this? How can I stop them from doing it to another? What can I do? Can you do anything? And is this what you want to make of your life and day? How many more would you have to get into about it? Or can we take our lives back? So it's something that's an individual choice, a group choice, community choice sometimes that, you have to look at the matter, the issue. And so can we jump on to the next slide? And so, of course, the matter. So we're getting into this, and this is the matter taking physiological forms, and the neurological, psychological, and it isn't always. This is not a black and white thing, but we're looking at victims of trauma, mental health, behavioral health, spiritual as well, and then how it manifests as a virus. In our teachings, we see physical health, spiritual health, any of these, all as viruses, as sicknesses, and spirit has form. Sickness has form. And we dealt with that. We dealt with that being inside you. And as it starts to change your structure, a virus starts to attack and move through your system. We look at that living being and it can be killed. It can be killed. That spirit can be taken out of you, released and removed, that matter. So when we look at this, and I think you guys can kind of get the gist of it. Of course, I numbered it starting off at the east there, northeast door, and going clockwise. We have the factors that may contribute to mental illness, the stress that can lead to, and so and then it goes on. And so the causes of mental illness. So we're looking at, on this source, and I think we know some of the causes, a lot of stressors and traumas. And then it gets into how the brain goes into defense, all of this. And then so how it kind of becomes a complex compound co-occurring. Oh, Doc Fossey, you want to jump in there?
Oh, I forgot I turned it on. But I'm back to when Teresa talked about even violations, trauma, things that overwhelm our humanity, the skin that those of us that were sexually molested or whatever, or the molester I've worked with, a lot of times people that are hurt end up acting out their hurt. They hurt others. How crazy is that? What a species. People that don't know they're afraid will scare other people. People that don't know they're mean will hurt other people. They'll act it out till they finally get it, till they finally hear. And so it's not just a problem for the individual, it's a problem for the community. For all that we affect, we're affected by and affect all around us just with energy. I've had people say, well, I didn't say a thing, but you did. You shouted your joy or you shouted your negativity. You're not a very good poker player. You're kind of loud among us, even if you don't say anything, because your energy is so strong. And so I remind you that you're constantly changing. For example, the skin that's on your body, you won't have more than 18 days that you can touch and feel. It has changed so many times in your lifetime. You've recreated yourself again and again and again and again. And so two words we like to play with, Lakota, Dakota, and but I like to play with English too. And so two of the words I like to play with, one is live to give, or in other words, live for giving. Don't live to get, don't live for getting. And so learn from our lessons. And a couple other words that I want to play with is response able rather than reactive. If you react to everything the way you've always reacted, you'll get the same outcomes. That's natural law. If you respond to what you desire or aspire to, oh, now you're going to change. Now you're going to change your belief, your thought, your word, or your action. So I call that being able to respond. So be responsible, not reactive. Okay, thanks. I'm done, Teresa.
Miigwech Doc Foster. Yes, we did put our past behind us, the trauma, the hardship, whatever, but we took the lessons with us. So that way we wouldn't be going on and falling into that same trap. So the what would you do situation. So if somebody could come up to you and say, hey folks, um, when this happens to somebody, watch this over here. Watch this happen to them, this bad thing. And they're going to react one of these ways. And then this is going to end up happening to them and set them off in this kind of way. Watch this. Watch this. This is what usually happens. So somebody told you this victim programming, this a victim response, this reactionary to handling or not handling what has happened to us will cause you to go one of these ways. Will you go that way then when you know it's not going to serve you or your life or anything you're about or the good or fruitate what you're looking for? And when we talk about that, then we also need to talk about what they can do. What can you do? And put back in their hand. So if we could jump onto the next slide there, and that's kind of, this is kind of the what happens and what keeps coming, how it spirals out. So here's some of those resources. I really like this Dr. Wayne Dyer. In the kind of more universal teachings in some ways. I think as tribal people, we can relate some of that. So it might be a resource for some people. This Eleanor, I think is wonderful. You might like. She's, I believe, from England, and she had schizophrenia developed when she was in college. It's a wonderful story on TED Talks. When you listen to it, you can see that sometimes our people are trying to journal, the trying to remember. You're attaching to what? So our people talk about being blocked or being triggered and things like that, and why I can't connect with this. And these blocks are because of what we're putting our focus on too oftentimes. So journaling and putting our focus and our energy into our past traumas, what we're upset about, what happened to us, is putting us in what state? What are we investing in there? And not that we should disregard it, because we need to find the lessons. We need to be able to let go of it. We need to work through it, but not to make this only you, your life, your focus. And so what happens when we go into that safe space, when we go on with our life? She was in that safe space. She was going on with her life, and something triggered it. And then it brought the schizophrenia on. It brought the what we see as spirits talking. She and then tried to get help in the what she went through. So I think it's really educational if you listen to her story from the outside looking in, that what happened and then what it was bringing up, a past trauma. So she was in that safe space, and then the brain tried to reprotect her because it didn't think she was ready to, or at the time, to handle it. So I think that's interesting, because I think a lot of our people can relate, but that it is good to be in that safe space, good to recreate or create your life and get it back and get it back, move on. And in that space, that past trauma or that repressed memory may just come back now, because you're finally in a safe space. Spirit doesn't want you to suffer. Good spirit. Spirit wants you to be able to handle. So spirit wants you to be self-caring before spirit can come in and give you more. And then, so just some more resources in here. If we can jump on to the next slide. This is about it for us. Thank you guys so much, Miigwech, for your time. Time is one of the most precious gifts in life. I hope this helps. Reach out if there's anything more I can do. Here's some references and some more resources, you know, the different spirit being stories to look at from those images. And I don't know, take the slides off, I guess. If there's anything anybody wants to share, Doc Foster, if you got anything more last minute to jump in there with, or I hope it helped.
Teresa, thank you so much. This was a great follow-up part 2, and I even heard some things this time that I didn't hear the first time on a couple of those slides. So that's great. And you're gonna have to rest your voice here this afternoon. That was a lot of information. We're gonna send these out via PDF or provide a link so that you can access them. We just ask that you use this information responsibly and for good. So please please join us again next month. We have another behavioral health webinar scheduled for April 20th at noon Central. Those of you that are on our listserv will have an email with an announcement for those types of events. But again, I want to thank Dr. Dan Foster and Teresa Sault-Brill for a wonderful, wonderful presentation. And for those of you that stayed on with us for the entire event, thank you very much. I know 2 hours is a long stretch, so thank you. And we'll see you all again. I did post the event survey link in the chat, but you'll have another opportunity to complete that when you receive the follow-up email. Thank you again, everyone. And until next time, stay safe, stay connected, and stay healthy. We'll see you again.
And Christina Bernal, that was fun. Your super string theory comment was just plain fun. I had to laugh when I started learning about theoretical physics because we already knew that from our medicine story.
I forgot.
Tiny man,
Yeah.
yellow kidney so long, brother.
Hey, Dan, I remember the first time I heard about string theory, I was like, oh, that's cute. Y'all just figured that out, huh? Everything's connected.
Yeah,
It was like, wow. It was like something I've inherently known since I was like 2, you know?
As a teenager, I finally decided I was pretty miserable. I was going to kill myself. But I was taking high school physics and I decided I won't take my life till I understand gravity. So now I'm in my 70s. I still don't understand gravity, but I did read a lot about superstring theory. The more I know, the more I find out I don't know. I can't ever kill myself. I'll just have to die of old age, I guess.
That's right, Doc. We got to have you stick around a while. We got some work to do. Thanks again, everybody. Take care.
Thanks all. Bless you.
Dokcha.
Doksha.